This video is about 10 simple meals that helped American families survive the hardest years of the 20th century. All of these meals share one thing in common. They were built around patience, shared tables, and knowing how to make something out of very little. They reflect a time when American life moved slower, families ate together, and a warm meal mattered more than variety, presentation, or choice. Back then, people didn't call it being poor, they called it living. Potato soup was one of the simplest meals American families relied on during hard times. It was usually nothing more than potatoes, onions, water, and a little milk if there was any to spare. Sometimes just salt and pepper. Nothing fancy. Nothing wasted. In many homes, a large pot of potato soup would sit on the stove all day. The potatoes were peeled slowly, often by children sitting at the kitchen table. The onions simmered until the whole house smelled warm and familiar. As the soup cooked, the potatoes broke down on their own, thickening the broth without cream or butter. That pot was meant to last. Dinner tonight, lunch tomorrow, sometimes even breakfast. Potatoes were cheap, filling, and easy to store. During the Great Depression, they were one of the few foods most families could still afford in quantity. A single pot of soup could feed 6 or more people, especially when served with a slice of bread. What mattered wasn't variety. It was that everyone ate. Today, soup is often something small, served before the real meal. Back then, potato soup was the meal. It was warm, it was reliable, and it showed how American kitchens worked when money was tight, slow cooking, simple ingredients, and enough patience to turn very little into something that could carry a family through the day. Rice and beans was not just a meal, it was a system. A way of cooking that fit perfectly into the rhythm of everyday American life when families had more time than money. Dried beans were rinsed and soaked overnight, often in a chipped bowl left on the counter. In the morning, they went into a large pot on the stove, where they would simmer for hours. Nothing about this meal was rushed. The beans softened slowly, absorbing flavor from salt, onion, or a leftover ham bone saved from Sunday dinner. Rice was cooked fresh or reheated, stretching the pot even further. This meal was especially common on work-heavy days. In many homes, Monday was laundry day. While clothes boiled and scrub boards scraped, rice and beans quietly cooked in the background, needing very little attention. By dinner time, the meal was ready, hot, filling, dependable. Rice and beans could feed a large family, sometimes 8 people or more, from one pot. It provided protein, energy, and enough calories to get through long days of physical work. It wasn't exciting food, but it worked. Today, meals are often judged by speed or variety. Rice and beans belong to a different logic. Food was meant to wait for you, not the other way around. This dish reflects a time when American kitchens were built around planning ahead, shared schedules, and the understanding that a full stomach mattered more than novelty or choice. Cornbread and pinto beans was a meal deeply rooted in the American South and Southwest, especially among working families who needed food that was cheap, filling, and dependable. Cornmeal was easier to find and far less expensive than wheat flour, which made cornbread a daily staple in many homes. Pinto beans were cooked slowly in a large pot, often seasoned with a small piece of salt pork or a ham hock if one was available. The beans simmered for hours, creating a rich broth that carried most of the flavor. This liquid, often called pot liquor, was never wasted. Cornbread was broken by hand and used to soak up every drop. This meal was eaten at the same table, night after night. Children learned early not to rush. You ate what was in front of you, and you ate it together. Leftover beans were saved, reheated, or even fried the next morning. Nothing was thrown away. Today, cornbread is often served as a side dish or made sweet like cake. Back then, it was sturdy, plain, and meant to fill you up. cornbread and beans reflected a time when American meals were built around sharing, repetition, and making the most of simple ingredients. It was food that didn't impress, but it sustained families through long days of work and long seasons of uncertainty. Fried potatoes were one of the most common meals in American kitchens because they could be eaten at any time of day. Breakfast, lunch, or dinner, it didn't matter. If there were potatoes and a little fat in the house, there was food. Potatoes were peeled and sliced by hand, often unevenly. Children helped at the table, learning how to hold a knife and move slowly. The slices were dropped into a hot pan with lard or saved bacon grease. As they cooked, the edges browned and crisped, filling the kitchen with a smell many people still remember clearly decades later. Fried potatoes were often eaten on their own or with onions mixed in. Sometimes they were served with eggs, sometimes with cornbread. There was no fixed recipe. The goal was simple: make something hot and filling. Today, fried potatoes usually come frozen and pre-cut. Back then, making them was part of learning how to cook. It took time and attention. You watched the pan. You stirred carefully. Fried potatoes reflect a time when cooking was a skill passed down through daily repetition, not written instructions. They were ordinary food, but deeply familiar, and for many families, they were the taste of home. Biscuits and gravy was a meal built entirely around making use of what others might throw away. The gravy started with saved meat drippings, fat collected from earlier meals and kept in a tin near the stove. Flour was stirred into the hot fat, forming a simple roux, then thinned with milk or water to create a thick, savoury sauce. The biscuits were plain and filling, made from flour, lard, and a little baking powder. Butter was often too expensive to waste on baking. When the gravy was poured over the biscuits, it turned basic ingredients into a meal that could carry a person through a long day of physical labour. In the hardest times, the gravy contained little or no meat at all. Black pepper was added generously, not just for flavour, but to give the illusion of richness. It was a small trick, but it worked. Biscuits and gravy was most often eaten in the morning when families needed energy for work ahead. It wasn't elegant food. It wasn't meant to be. It was comforting, familiar, and dependable. Today, this dish is often seen as diner food or a regional specialty. But for many American families, it was survival food. It reflected a way of thinking where nothing was wasted, flavors were built slowly, and comfort came not from abundance, but from knowing that breakfast would be hot and waiting. Grilled cheese and tomato soup became one of the most comforting meals in American homes during the Great Depression and the war years. It was warm, familiar, and easy to make with ingredients that were usually on hand. Slices of bread were filled with cheese and grilled slowly in a pan until the outside turned golden and crisp. When butter was scarce or rationed, many families used mayonnaise instead. It browned better and stretched supplies further. The sandwich was almost always served with tomato soup, often made from a can and diluted with water to feed more people. On cold days, this meal meant relief. Children came home from school, coats still on, and dipped their sandwiches into steaming bowls of soup. The smell alone signaled safety and warmth. Today, grilled cheese is often seen as a quick lunch or a childhood favorite. Back then, it was a reliable dinner. It didn't require planning ahead or expensive ingredients. It was predictable, and that mattered. This meal reflected a time when comfort food wasn't about indulgence. It was about consistency. Families didn't need many choices. They needed something hot, filling, and familiar at the end of the day. Grilled cheese and tomato soup offered exactly that, a simple reminder that even in difficult times, a warm meal could still bring everyone to the table. Tuna casserole became popular in the 1940s as canned foods became more widely available. Its appeal was simple. Canned tuna was inexpensive, easy to store, and didn't require refrigeration, which made it ideal for families with limited resources. The casserole was made by mixing tuna with cooked noodles and canned soup, usually cream of mushroom. The mixture was poured into a baking dish and topped with crushed crackers for texture. Once baked, it became a complete meal that could feed an entire family. This dish had a strong presence in American kitchens because of its reliability. When families smelled a casserole baking, they knew dinner was settled. There was no guessing, no improvising at the last minute. Today, casseroles are sometimes seen as old-fashioned, but in their time, they represented efficiency and care. Tuna Casserole reflected a moment in American life when predictability brought comfort. Families didn't eat out. They ate together, often from one dish placed in the center of the table. This meal wasn't about excitement or presentation. It was about knowing that everyone would be fed. Tuna Casserole shows how American cooking adapted to new products while holding on to the same values, stretching food, planning ahead, and creating a sense of security through routine. Fried Spam became an essential meal during World War II, when fresh meat was scarce and refrigeration was unreliable. Spam's long shelf life made it a valuable source of protein in many American households. The meat was sliced thick and placed in a hot pan, where it quickly browned and crisped on the outside. The salty aroma filled the kitchen, signaling that food was ready. Fried Spam was often served with eggs for breakfast or placed between slices of bread for a filling lunch. At the time, Spam wasn't seen as novelty food. It was dependable. Families could keep it in the pantry for months, knowing it would be there when needed. That sense of security mattered. Today, Spam is sometimes treated as a joke or a curiosity. But for millions of families, it was survival food. It provided energy, salt, and fat, everything needed for long days of work. Fried Spam reflects a period when practicality mattered more than preference. People cooked what lasted, not what impressed. This dish reminds us of a time when food was judged by its ability to sustain, not by its image. In uncertain years, having something reliable on the shelf meant peace of mind. Spaghetti and marinara became a staple in American homes, largely thanks to Italian immigrant families who brought with them a different way of thinking about food. They showed that a good meal didn't need expensive ingredients, only time, care, and a shared table. Marinara sauce was built from canned tomatoes, one of the cheapest and most reliable pantry items available year-round. Tomatoes were simmered slowly with garlic, onions, and dried herbs. The sauce cooked gently on the stove, filling the house with a warm, familiar smell that told everyone dinner was coming. Pasta itself was inexpensive and filling. A single pound could feed a large family when paired with sauce. Meat, if used at all, was added sparingly. The goal was never luxury, it was fullness. This dish fit perfectly into American kitchens during hard times because it stretched well and reheated easily. Leftovers were expected. Plates were wiped clean with bread. Nothing was wasted. Today, spaghetti is often dressed up with specialty ingredients and served as a restaurant meal. Back then, it was practical food. It brought families together around a single pot and reminded people that simplicity could still be satisfying. Spaghetti and marinara reflected an important truth at the time: care mattered more than cost. A slow simmered sauce and a shared meal were enough to create comfort, even when resources were limited. Bread pudding was the dessert that proved survival food could still feel like a treat. It was made not from fresh ingredients, but from leftovers, stale bread that would otherwise be thrown away. Old slices of bread were torn by hand and placed into a baking dish. Milk was poured over them, followed by beaten eggs, a little sugar, cinnamon, and sometimes raisins if the family had them. Nothing was measured precisely. It depended on what was available. As it baked, the bread soaked up the custard, transforming into something soft, warm, and comforting. The smell of cinnamon filled the kitchen, signaling that something special was coming, even if it wasn't fancy. Bread pudding mattered because it preserved a sense of normalcy. Children still had dessert. Families still ended meals on a sweet note. In times when so much felt uncertain, that small routine meant everything. Today, desserts are often elaborate and store-bought. Back then, bread pudding was an act of care. It's said that even in difficult times, dignity still had a place at the table. This dish reflected a mindset where nothing was wasted and every meal counted. Bread pudding wasn't about indulgence. It was about making the most of what you had and showing love through effort. For many people, this was the taste of their grandmother's kitchen. Warm, familiar, and quietly reassuring. These 10 meals paint a clear picture of how American life once worked. Food was built around planning ahead, shared schedules, and the understanding that a meal was more than fuel. It was a daily routine that held families together. Back then, kitchens ran on skills, patience, and repetition. People cooked what lasted, used what they had, and expected leftovers. Meals were predictable, not because life was boring, but because stability mattered. Today, life moves faster. Food is chosen for speed, convenience, and individual preference. We eat at different times, in different places, often alone. The logic has changed. This isn't about saying one way was better than the other. It's about noticing what those old meals quietly carried with them. Time spent together, shared responsibility, and the comfort of knowing dinner would be waiting. Maybe the lesson isn't to go back. Maybe it's simply to remember that a warm meal, made with care, once shaped everyday life in ways we rarely stop to notice anymore.